Hi, everybody. It's Tim Constantine from the Washington Times, joined by my good friend, ForAmerica, Dave Bozell. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. You know, I don't know if you noticed this, but the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is in town this week.
Yeah.
And he and Trump sat down. They had, anytime you get a reception at the White House, it's a good gig. It's a big deal. The red carpet, all that. This is as big and as good as it gets. They had the red carpet waiting for the prince when he came. They had Oval Office meetings. They had a big black tie dinner. And then at the Kennedy Center, they had the meetings with all the business world. So this is 2 days worth of pageantry and substance. Why is Saudi Arabia important? Are they important to the United States? And if so, why?
Well, I would suggest what other semi-new superpower is the United States going to do business with, and the type of business we're talking north of $500 billion, close to $1 trillion worth of investment. It's not like Europe has much going for it economically. It's not like maybe Japan would be another option, but we've done that, right? We've made all sorts of good deals with Japan, so there's very little options for the United States by way of international investment. So Saudi Arabia becomes a natural option for us. So I commend the president and his team for securing such a huge number. I really hope that we're able to see the benefits of this prior to bringing this into a political lens prior to the midterms.
It's an interesting contrast because you may recall Joe Biden going to Saudi Arabia literally hat in hand and trying to bring down the price of oil. And two things happened. MBS literally, the Crown Prince literally laughed at Joe Biden. And I mean that, literally laughed at Joe Biden. And then when he left, they raised the price of oil. They completely did the opposite of what he had requested. There was no relationship whatsoever with Saudi Arabia. And we see such a different scenario now where they're both talking business. And of course, there are good things. You mentioned the investment. The Saudis have committed, according to these memorandums of understanding, to $1 trillion being pumped into the United States in one way or another, either through the F-35 program or through other things. There are some things that are good for both sides. Obviously, $1 trillion coming into the U.S. economy is really good, but the Saudis are looking at getting the best chips, AI chips, anywhere on planet Earth. They're looking at doing development right there in Saudi Arabia with American expertise on AI for the future. They are looking at so many different things they've talked about. They haven't made the final commitment, but they've talked about joining the Abraham Accords. And I think in terms of stability in the Middle East, which is good for the entire world, Saudi Arabia is really one of the keys to that. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're richer than anybody over there. And if they're willing to participate with Israel, then a whole lot of other dominoes all fall into place. So economically, it's great. Strategically, it's great. And as far as peace goes, these two presidents, or this Crown Prince and the president, these two leaders love each other. That can only be good.
Yeah, look, I've been 47 years old. For my entire life, all I have ever seen is the Middle East in conflict, death, destruction, despair. This country's fighting that country, and then there's different coalitions of other countries fighting other countries, and there is, I think, a little bit of a Middle East exhaustion out of the American populace, and you see this kind of representing itself on the right with regards to let's temper down some of our support for Israel. But a lot of it is fueled by the fact that we've just for decades now have just experienced this unending level of conflict and death and war and dragging into the United States military into these conflicts. It does not get solved unless the two big dogs on the block, the United States and Saudi Arabia, get along.
Yeah.
You're not going to have peace in that region unless the United States and Saudi Arabia get along. And $1 trillion of investment is a step in the right direction. Now, the president's got to take that, right, and explain to his constituents, the American people, how this is going to benefit people on the ground. Making the makers of the F-35 rich again is nice, I guess, but this has got us poured down to Main Street. This is almost like a tariff on steroids, and just a tariff by another name, which is fine. But it's got to trickle down to Main Street, and I hope President Trump has a plan to get that done and get that message out to the country. Otherwise, it's 2 days of pomp and circumstance and red carpets and Fortune 500s making a buck, and that's not going to be good for him on the where the midterm's concerned. So it's got to trickle down to Main Street. You would hope that some part of that $1 trillion does.
To your point, when you said you're 47 and your entire life there has been turmoil and war in the Middle East,
Yeah.
I'm even older than you are, and that extends throughout my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, despite my knowledge, and I spend a lot of time in the Middle East, I've had 6 trips to the region this year, and I love the Middle East despite the turmoil, despite
Yeah.
the trouble, but I'm fully aware of the challenges it faces. What's unique for me, I was at the Arab Summit. Baghdad hosted the Arab Summit earlier this year, and I was there, and this was even before the agreement in Gaza had come to bring about a ceasefire and peace. And there was an optimism among the leaders throughout the Arab region. There was an optimism like I have never seen. They
That's good.
actually believed this could be a turning point, realizing it's not about 50 years of turmoil. We got 2,000 years of turmoil in the region. It's
Yeah.
all the area has ever known. They are, then by they, I mean the leadership of these various Arab countries, are so enthusiastic and excited. They believe this is one of those historical moments in time. And it's not just bluster, they believe it in their heart. And so it's exciting for me to see that. And I think investment, not just in the US, but in long-term beneficial things for the region by Saudi Arabia goes a long way toward making that a reality.
Tim, I'm curious, do you attribute that enthusiasm to President Trump?
I do. What
Okay.
we've seen is Trump has, what's he been in 9 months, 10 months that he's been back in office?
Yeah.
And the region has clearly been his number one foreign priority. The economy and other things here have been the border and so on. But the Middle East region has been his number one foreign priority.
Right.
They see that, they sense that, they appreciate it, they respect it, and they appreciate the fact, and this is a cultural thing, force, strength is something that region understands.
Right.
That has been a militarized area for a couple of thousand years where the strongest man wins.
Yeah.
And they see Donald Trump as a strong man. You can like him, you can dislike him, but he stands behind. You didn't see the Saudis complain. They're not big fans of Israel, but you
Right.
didn't see the Saudis complain when the U.S. joined Israel and dropped some bombs in Iran to
Right.
tamp down the nuclear ambitions there. You see them appreciating the strength put forth by this administration, and you see them willing to work with them. That's something culturally they understand. So I attribute it 95% to the Trump administration.
Yeah, you mentioned Iran and Israel. I don't know how much Saudi Arabia was involved militarily. If they were, I think it would give the American people a little bit more confidence to know that publicly, right? I don't need to see the Saudi Arabians fighting, going on the ground, fighting tooth and nail. That's not what I mean. But just in terms of intelligence gathering, intelligence sharing, at least some kind of a hat tip. It's one thing to bless it. It's one thing to be quiet, but some kind of a hat tip to know that Saudi Arabia is serious about peace generally in the whole region, I think would be beneficial for the American news consumer and information consumer, because I still think there's a lot of folks who are wary of the relationship because you've had decades of conflict, right? And you just mentioned Biden, who never got along and went hat in hand and begged for gas prices to be lowered and was turned down. Those are our gas prices, right? Those are things that we're paying for at the pump. So if the president of Saudi Arabia could be a little bit more vocal about how they're working hand in glove to secure the peace, I think that would be beneficial for the American consumer to know.
And just as a final note, I'll give you one little encouraging tidbit there. The Houthis are in Yemen, which is a border country with Saudi Arabia, and they are the gnats, they are the mosquitoes, they are the constant thorn in the side of Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia. And of course, during the war in Gaza, they were sending missiles up the Red Sea toward Israel. But they have for years been a thorn in the side of Saudi Arabia, and they are funded and promoted by Iran. So
Yeah.
what you've seen Saudi Arabia do this year is really tamp down. They're trying to de-escalate with the Houthis, who are still there and they are still provoking and they are still oddly organized, but they don't have all the funding coming from Iran. And so rather than obliterate them and escalate again, you've seen the Saudis. And my guess, I don't know this, I don't have any inside baseball, but my guess is that the State Department played a role in that and saying, whoa, look, we're bringing about peace everywhere in the
Right.
Middle East. Let's
Right.
bring that down. But the Saudis are, to their great credit, they are bringing that down. So I think we're all on the same page. We're all in the same songbook. And let's just hope that the choir keeps singing for a long time.
Well, now they'll have some new F-35s to go get them. So
That's right. They'll have some new tools for America. He is Dave Bozell. I'm Tim Constantine. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.